Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. 2015 is a year of change for Norfolk State University, the latest HBCU to be placed on probation by its accrediting agency, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, or SACS. SACS said it found significant problems with NSU's governance, finances, and administration. A blow to the university, which has spent the past year working to improve in these areas. In light of this development, the Another View Roundtable is asking the question, are HBCUs still necessary? Roger, Carol, Wil, Bill, and Eric have some answers. Another View is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. On behalf of the Another View crew, we wish you health, wealth, peace, and happiness in this new year. And before we get started with our roundtable today, I want to say a very special hello to Sylvia Payne and Kathy Richardson. They are here in the Another View studio watching us in the control room. Sylvia won an auction item, which was to have the opportunity to come to Another View show and then have lunch this afternoon. So we're looking forward to that, and we thank both of them for their support of WHRO. So today, to kick off our first live show of 2015, is our Another View Roundtable. My favorite folks on the air, Roger Chesley, who's columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his column every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Happy New Year, Roger.
Happy New Year to you, Barbara.
How you doing?
I like the wealth and the happiness part of that.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I do too. NSU political science professor Carol Pretlow. Hi, Carol. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Good
and
to see
everybody.
you. Author, journalist, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. How you doing, Wil?
I'm doing well. Happy
Good.
New Year.
Happy New Year to you
and
too.
happy Founders Day to all of my brothers at Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated.
All right, there you go.
January 9th, 1914.
And our guest pundit today, Dr. Eric Clavel, assistant professor of law, political science, and history at Hampton University. Welcome back, Eric.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well.
Same to you. And Bill Thomas, our community activist and all-around favorite guy, is on his way, and hopefully he'll slide in here in just a moment. Allegedly, yes. So today we're talking about HBCUs, or for those who are unfamiliar, historically black colleges and universities. There are 101 existing HBCUs today, and many of them, unfortunately, are in trouble financially, through governance, programs, etc. So we're going to talk about HBCUs, talk about their history and why they were started in the first place, and what their relevance is today, and how do they continue to be a relevant part of our educational institutions. So I want to start, and I want to ask each of you to tell me, because all of us and everyone in this panel currently, without the exception of Bill, is a graduate of an HBCU. So I would like to know, what is your definition of the HBCU experience? We always talk about it's a different type of experience. Will, you went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania? And what is the HBCU?
The first HBCU.
Okay. So what is an HBCU experience from your perspective?
Oh, for me, it was a fantastic experience, because having grown up in New York City in low-income area public housing, I hadn't been used to seeing a lot of African Americans actually in positions of leadership. So though for my parents, I was growing about the importance of education and had what I think was a very full upbringing in terms of being confident, to actually be on a campus and see people in positions of leadership and be mentored by them meant the world to me. I went through busing in New York City, where I was going to schools, predominantly white neighborhoods, being taught by teachers who made it clear that they really didn't want me to succeed. So I was battling. So to be able to endure that and then go on to an HBCU and be mentored by professionals made all the world to me. It set me on my course to be a journalist.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 88.
88. Okay. Carol, you went to...
Well, Fisk University.
Yes, Fisk.
Yeah. And I hesitated a bit because I transferred to Fisk, and I transferred because of a professor at Norfolk State, Dr. Bill Robinson, who was supposed to go to Fisk to teach. And I was so impressed by him. I had seen him in the media. I had read comments of his, and I wanted to study under him. So I went to Fisk, and I had been there 2 weeks, and he came and he said, you know what, I'm going back to Norfolk State. I said, what? And he said, but you got a scholarship here, so stay, too. We'll talk summers. And
so what is an HBCU experience from your perspective?
From my perspective, it is a growing experience that shows how we have progressed through the ages, but more than that is a mentorship experience that you don't learn everything in one generation. And so here you have a group of professors and a group of staff and all who most of all have been a part of the experience and who are letting you in and showing you what your part of the experience will be and what this means for the larger society. So
that's your experience.
That's my experience.
Okay. And Roger, you are a graduate of Howard University.
The capstone.
The capstone, yes. Absolutely. Yes. And when did you graduate, and what is your idea?
I'm a 1981 graduate, and I think the word that comes to mind most for me when you talk about HBCUs is nurturing.
Yeah.
And there was a certain sense of taking somebody in and being there, and faculty and administrators who I think were going to go the extra mile to help you succeed. I went to a mostly white high school, a Catholic high school, and it was a very good atmosphere there. But as one of my sisters told me, who was all six of us went to Howard and graduated from there undergrad, growing up in D.C. And she said, you've had the white experience on one level. I think you need to get grounded in this. I think this would be good for you. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the best things that I did. Now maybe I would have the same friendships and the same contacts in any university. But there was a special feeling about that. There was a special feeling about black faculty members and white faculty members who bought into this idea that we are going to make you better, and we are going to, if you have the desire, we're going to help you. There are people who aren't serious about going to college too.
Yes.
And you get weeded out. But if you are serious about this, we are going to help you. Mm-hmm. And some of the leaders that came there, Robert Mugabe came there shortly after taking control in Zimbabwe. It was a different Robert Mugabe than the one who's still there today. But just some of the things that you were exposed to. Kwame Ture would still come back to campus. He had been there, as a student. He would still come back to campus there. So it was very special, very special.
Eric, you went to Southern University in Baton Rouge,
that is
Louisiana.
Correct.
And what year did you graduate, and what is your idea of an HBCU experience?
Sure. I'm probably the baby of the group. I graduated in 2000.
Yeah.
That was I graduated in 2000 from undergrad at Southern University and A&M College, and I'm a twice over graduate of Southern University because I also graduated from the law school in 2006. And I also went to a majority institution, Louisiana State LSU University, to receive my master's degree. But for me, the experience is, well, the word that comes to mind is foundation. Very similar to a lot of our panelists. I grew up in a family, my mother and father, where they pushed education. Also, it was pushed in our church. And we had a very special church where I was able to be with individuals that pick cotton for 50 cents a day. Now, this is stuff you read about, but we actually knew the individuals. Okay. I also had an opportunity to see we had one of the first black PhDs in our church, and individuals with master's degrees and were professionals. My uncle was a lawyer, retired judge. My best friend, father, even now, he's a federal judge, his uncle and so forth. Our doctors were black and so on. But we were and my father was a small business owner. So with that, I mean, we had a picture of excellence. Okay, nothing else less was going to be accepted. Even when we went off to college, our church would give us a Bible to keep God first, a tie because you're dressing for the job that you want, not the one that you have, and also $25. Now, they never got above that $25. I don't know what they did, but we still received it. And my brother and I say all the time that we were products of the first generation of full-blown integration. So we always went to integrated schools. We never knew schools that were not integrated. And the schools that we also went to were considered the best schools, not only in the city, but in the state. You had to actually take a test to get in. They were magnet schools. So with that being the case, we were exposed to very good education, very good surrounding, a lot of African Americans mixed in with the other students. And Southern University was a choice because you wanted to get back to what was familiar with you. And what happened with me at Southern is that I received, I was told that I could be a leader. I knew that I could be a leader, but everything represented leadership. You were pushed to succeed. You weren't questioned about, why do you talk that way? You weren't a question about, why is your hair that way? You weren't a question about, this or that, but it was embraced and it gave you that confidence to move forward. So for me, it was a foundation to build up on for the future and where I am now.
Okay. Welcome, Bill Thomas. Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you.
Through the tunnel. I know that was a traffic nightmare, but we're happy that you're here. So I'm going to ask you, because if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are the only one of the panel who did not attend undergrad in HBCU, but you currently work at an HBCU. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what you see as the differences in the two.
Well, I had the fortune of having parents and grandparents who attended HBCUs, Southern, Grambling, Texas Southern. So they were all there. They're dentists and doctors, and we're third, fourth generation postgraduate kids. My kids are fifth generation. So I understood the HBCUs. And highly connected, mother-in-law is the AKA, from Southern and Grambling and all that stuff. So that was very well understood about that and that. And I had the other fortune of being raised in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where you had a lot of upcoming lieutenant colonels and colonels and things going there who had also graduated from HBCUs because you couldn't go anyplace else. But I was first to integrate, unfortunately, really integrate the University of Kansas. Unfortunately, in 1970. Now, you had Wilk Chamberlain and Gail Sayers, but the first real integrating class, we had 365 African Americans from Kansas go and integrate University of Kansas. We were the part. We were trained by Army officers and wives, Colin Powell wives, and all those wives used to get in, train us, and get us ready to go. And so we had that experience with something else, but I didn't really have any experience with HBCUs other than knowing that and being a part of our family. So we understood that well. Parents and uncles and aunts worked for Texas Southern in Houston, and so we understood that.
Okay, so everyone had, and just for the benefit of the group, I graduated from Bennett College in 1978, also an HBCU, an all-female college, and I agree with all of you all in terms of what that HBCU experience is. But when you hear then issues such as what Norfolk State is facing right now, a lot of people say that HBCUs are inferior or they don't teach as well as the majority institutions. What's your reaction to comments like that? Let's start with you, Will.
Well, my reaction to that is that you can't lump HBCUs into a monolith of a particular category and all of them are the same. They're so very different. And so it really comes down to what does that designation mean? What is the benefits of being called an HBCU other than historic? That is that they were created because the majority white institutions did not want black students to attend. So other than that, they're very different. I went to Lincoln University, which is in rural Pennsylvania, southeast Pennsylvania, out in the middle of nowhere.
Very different from Howard University in the middle of the city.
Howard is right in the middle of the city. Norfolk State is right in the middle of the city. So in many ways, Howard and Norfolk State have more in common with Old Dominion University or a university is right in the middle of the city than they do with Lincoln. So you can't. What I think there needs to be some clarity as to what does that mean? Because when you lump them all together, you went to Bennett. Bennett is an all women's college. Lincoln started as an all males college and then added women. They're very different schools.
Carol, you teach at an HBCU, so is the education level the same? Is it different? Is it less than?
I don't think it's less than, and I don't think it's different. I think that there is more person-to-person contact because classes are smaller. And I'll give an example. When I was in college at Fisk, a professor noticed some analytical problems that I had, and he gave me the paper back and he said, why don't you do this again? And let's see, and then I'll grade it. Well, that's the same strategy that I use in classes with my students. I said, okay, here's a preliminary grade, but why don't we work on this? Your sentence structure needs it. So it's more person-to-person contact. I'm not sure that that's any different because when I went to law school at American University, again, a professor noticed a weakness in an analysis that I did and said, come on, let's get this together. Let's do this. So I'm not sure that it's different. I think size may make a difference because if you have 75 students in a class as opposed to 25 or 30, then your teaching strategies have to be adjusted. But I'm not,
Within that, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation today. Are you a graduate of an HBCU? We'd love to hear from you. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Bill, you're over at Hampton University at a private HBCU. Is there a difference in the level of education, do you think?
Well, there is one similarity with all HBCUs. They're 95% black probably, and that range. But other than that, I think that they're similar. There are some HBCUs that are very, very, very good, excellent. There are some that are mediocre. There are some that are not so good. It's no dissimilar.
And isn't that the case of
every university on the face of this earth?
Exactly.
So in that sense, there's nothing. The only thing that really highlights African Americans is that we don't get the respect that other institutions get just because we have 95% black population, and that's just a fact. So, but they're very good. Same as everything. They do the same thing. It's no difference. It's no different than CNU or UVA or Virginia Tech or anybody else. That's all the same. Very good white institutions. They're very bad white institutions. So same thing.
Well, Roger, go ahead.
And one of the things that I discussed with Belle Whelan, who is the head of SACS, when St. Paul's College went out of business, was, is this a particular problem with HBCUs. And she said, I want to make this clear. This is a problem really for small private institutions. Period. And, there were certain problems that St. Paul's College was facing that other white small private institutions were facing. So she said, you really have to look at these universities individually and see what the challenges are for these particular universities. So she didn't really see this as a governance problem per se in terms of accreditation with HBCUs as much as with some of the smaller institutions that were out there, and especially some of the smaller private institutions that were out there.
Eric, dispel the myth that only African Americans can go to HBCUs.
Sure. HBCUs have been the only institutions that have never discriminated against anyone else being able to attend there. It's always been a choice. Now, keep in mind that HBCUs were primarily created after, even before the 14th Amendment was ratified. States could, if they wanted to, create separate educational facilities. But it was really the Morrill Act of 1862 and then the amending of it of 1890, which provided states with money to set up what you call land grant institutions. So your state universities like UVA, Virginia Tech, and the like, or what you call land grant institution that receive federal funds to start universities. Now, in 1890, it was amended to allow states to qualify for federal land grant funds by establishing or designating all black publicly funded higher education land grant institutions in their respective states. Before that, in 1862, states could not discriminate against African Americans to allow them to attend their universities. But of course, in politics, things tend to happen, and that's where you receive the amendment. But I want to go back to, if I can, very quickly for a few seconds, about the misconception that there's inferior teaching at HBCUs. As I'm 39 years old, and outside of the 3 years I spent in corporate, I've spent half of my life either being educated at HBCU or working in an HBCU. So with that being the case, when I go to places, I go to many places speaking and presenting and things of that nature, the question is, oh, where'd you go to school? And when I mentioned Southern University, like, oh, because their perception is different from what we know inside of HBCUs, that we produce some of the best students out there. And because of that, it's about getting the information out there, getting our students out there. But, the problem, I have to agree with the panelists, the problem that we have is that, unfortunately, because you're viewed as black, you're viewed as inferior, period. And it's what theory that I have, which is called the three intangibles that dictate the tangibles, which creates a black-white issue, and that's credit, respect, and benefit of the doubt. White population receive those. Black population do not.
Mm-hmm. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Kelly joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Kelly. You're on the air.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I did not go to an HBCU, but I've been on the campuses, and particularly here in the Hampton Roads area. And I just have a question for the panel. It disturbs me when I see how our students dress and come to class. There was a time when we were all growing up that we were told, dress for success, dress like the position you want to get to. And that seems to have no bearing out. I mean, I've been told what I see on the street is worse than what's in the classrooms, and that teachers don't have any ruling over how students come. But I think the way we come to class has a lot to do with what we take out of class. If we don't come prepared, and that also means dressing the part, we're not going to get out of it everything that we should. And so I'm just interested in how the panel feels about that. I just think, the way, like I said, some of the women dress, it's too distracting for the young men to study, even the teachers sometimes. And I think those kinds of things have a bearing on higher education. I don't know what it's like on the white campuses. I don't know what it's like in the Ivy League schools, but I just tend to think that it's not as permissible as we allow it. And if we're talking about the HBCUs being a community and that, we're trying to help raise and inspire our youth to do better, then I think the teachers need to start pulling students to the side and saying, hey, this is not the way you prepare for success.
Okay,
so,
Kelly, you know what? We've got the panel is chomping at the bit to respond to you. So thank you so much for calling. And I'm going to start with you, Bill.
That's horrible stereotype. Horrible, just horrible. My son went to UVA. He was president of his fraternity. He's on the student union, vice president. They look so terrible. He was president of one of those large frat houses, and it smelled like a beer brewery. They had all these wild parties every Saturday. You could find him by following the beer cans and the liquor bottles, because that's where he was a football player too. So they did all of that stuff at UVA. Horrible stereotype. At Hampton University, as an administrator, if I see someone that is just dressed not properly, not the way she's describing, it is my responsibility to stop that student, tell them what they're doing wrong, and right there, before they go to class, tell them we're going to fix this. I'll never forget, I never talk about Hampton, but I'll talk about it this time. The president and I were going to go to a trip someplace one time, and he was in the car with me, and I pulled out, and I thought I had ran over this kid with this little scooter, with a handicap scooter thing that didn't have a flag on it, because he jumped out, and I said, oh my God, I done ran over this guy. He jumped out and told this kid who had a T-shirt down to his belly, some old shirt cut off on, he told him, go right back to that room, fix that, or at 5 o'clock your stuff will be out at the gate. So it's all a matter of perception, and that is just totally untrue. If you want to go down to Charlottesville right now and you walk around that campus, and then I will invite you. My number is 757-727-5310. You come over to Hampton University in Norfolk State as well, and you will see at Hampton the best dressed people, women walking around like they're going to church every day. And gentlemen just have suits and ties and bow ties on, so that is emphatically untrue.
Okay, I'm going to go down the line. Go ahead, Will.
I have a little different take on that. I would challenge Kelly to ask herself, why does she have that perception? Because she just said, I hadn't been on the other campuses, but this is how I think and how I feel from what I've seen. Now, I'm probably one of the few people who have been on multiple campuses. My first college experience was actually Anna Maria College in Paxton, Massachusetts.
Wow, I never even heard of that
Small
school.
white school. I never heard of it either. They recruited me to come up there and play basketball. I wanted to get out of New York. I said, all right, I'm down. I'm going. Got there. 2 weeks, I said, I'm getting out of here as quick as I can. I stayed the rest of the year, played it out. I transferred to Lincoln. Lincoln, small, rural, not major city college, small state college, rural, Pennsylvania. Had the greatest time of my life. I went to the University of Arizona School of Journalism, Tucson, Arizona. I'm now a doctoral candidate at Old Dominion University. These are very different schools. And when you go on these campuses and you see the way people are dressed, there are no differences. If you want to see some horrible dressing and you want to see some great dressing, you can just see it right there at Old Dominion.
Pick one. Carol.
Well, I think my comments duplicate those that we have heard because I have spent time at predominantly white institutions. I have spent time out of the country at Oxford and other institutions, and you see a whole variety of things. And from the professor's perspective, we do address people that we think are not dressed correctly. And I try personally not to embarrass people in front of other individuals. I'll just say something like, could I speak to you after class? I said, okay, well, look, have you considered this or have you but those kind of conversations occur very rarely because basically my students are competitive and they want the job and they come dressed like they're going for a job.
Roger?
Going to Howard, we were often criticized for having some people, women especially, dressing like it's a fashion show, trying to be very, very professional. But we also had students who lived in the city, like myself, who commuted back and forth to campus. And, I wore jeans some days to school. But, let's not focus on what people are wearing. Let's focus on what's going on in the classroom, first of all. And then for those events that were more formal, that might involve a guest speaker or the like, you knew that there was a certain way that you were supposed to dress for those things. So, let's not get it twisted too much because, my children went to William and Mary, University of Miami, VCU. There are similar issues on those campuses too.
Eric, though, and one of the things though that HBCUs are known for, as you all have said before, is the nurturing. So in this instance, in terms of teaching students how to dress and so forth, a lot of times this is their first experience in understanding what they should do.
It is, and I can agree with all the panelists. Our campuses. It was an opportunity for a fashion show quite often. So you dress to impress, every day of the week. But also we do have dress codes as a professor, and we address the students. And there are some students, and I remember one student, and I met the student when she was a rising sophomore, and she wanted to participate in a competition that we had. And I told the student, I said, listen, this is how you have to dress, conservative, black or blue suit, because it was a mock trial competition. And I said, if you don't have this, come to me afterwards and we'll see what we can do. Well, the student came to me after and said, I don't have a black suit. So we got together and, with permission from my wife, we purchased a young lady,
the suit that she needs, the clothing that she needed.
And she, graduated top of her class, and she's doing very well now. But again, you're exactly right. We do nurture the students and show them, what's needed, because a lot of students just don't know.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the state of historically black colleges and universities with the Another View Roundtable. Roger Chesley with the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow with Norfolk State University, community activist Bill Thomas, Wil LaVeist, host of the Wil LaVeist Show, and guest pundit Dr. Eric Clavel with Hampton University. Let's go to Anthony from Southampton County. Hi, Anthony. You're on the air.
Hi, Barbara. I love your show, and good afternoon to the panel.
Thank you.
I'm driving right now. I'm tuning into the show, and I'm blessed to actually serve as the host of the HBCU Nation radio show. heard every week on the Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon.
Shameless plug.
That wasn't a plug, was that? Did the water stop going down the drain?
Question.
Yes, I went to Elizabeth City and graduated back in 1977, and I was the first HBCU graduate in the family. But since then, the last 40 years or so, we have over 40 graduates out of my family out of HBCUs. And of course, they're all living very productive lives and contributing in a wonderful way. I was calling to comment and to see what you all thought about the president's executive order that he signed about 3 or 4 years ago in his commitment to help do what he could do in his administration to strengthen our HBCUs towards helping the nation achieve its 2020 educational goals. In other words, trying to get us back in position when we are number one in the world in terms of college graduates. In that particular regard, I think HBCUs figure very prominently in helping the president to fulfill that particular executive order. And I just wanted to hear you guys make comments on what you think about that, and as it relates to relevance and, again, the HBCUs fulfilling a very critical role in making that happen.
Okay, thank you so much, Anthony. We'll get them to answer. Bill, I know you have some strong feelings about that initiative.
Absolutely, and I've served on State Council for Higher Education. I've been a board member of public universities in Virginia for the past 20 years, and I've been at Hampton. The president has not really lived up to that thing in terms of giving an equal opportunity to HBCUs, in my judgment. And just recently, Pell Grants were just cut $450 million, and some of the institutions like Virginia State, 95% of their kids are on Pell Grants. You have Student Plus loans where parents were helping their kids through college and graduating with lower debt. Those efforts to get there had been ratcheted up, and that's been a tremendous harm to not only HBCUs but some other schools as well, as because the Student Plus parents can't get the loans in a down economy for average middle class and poor families. It's just not there. It has gotten Virginia State in issues because just the numbers don't work. You have 95% of your kids on Pell Grants, and it's just not going to work. And then other stuff, the HBCUs and stuff that have been cut down with all of those kinds of things has been a failure. And actually, the presidents of the universities, all that I know of, have been I get upset about that. And I'm just really, truly, President has done a whole lot of things. Obama has done a whole lot of things. But the legacy that I think he could have to just give that little average edge by not cutting, at least maintaining the level in this really tight economy for poor folks and middle income people, it's been horrendous. And I don't think it's him. I think it's his advisors, but the numbers are the numbers, and you can't talk anything, but the data is there. $450 million cut, Pell Grants obligations have been so ratcheted up that nobody qualifies for them, hardly anymore, but people who don't need them. And so it's been very harmful to the African-American community, and especially by HBCUs.
Okay, Roger?
I'm not going to disagree with Bill's statistics there, but I think there's a bigger issue that we really haven't delved into so far today. And that's the fact that most of us are we're living now at a different time than when we went to college. There is so much more choice for young people today. And I think that the HBCUs as a whole have been very slow to try to come up with a different model to make their universities sustainable. You know, so many of the HBCUs now are having problems in enrollment, keeping the enrollment up. So much of the money for the institution comes from that. So many of the HBCUs suffer from not having its alumni give enough. And Howard, one of the bigger HBCUs out there, has one of those problems as well. And this was a big part when a lot of the Washington Post stories that came out in the last year and a half or so about the financial stability of Howard. And so we're not really, I think, grappling with that enough. Alvin Schexnayder, who has written a book about the struggles at HBCUs, Saving Black Colleges, Leading Change in a Complex Organization. He was a former chancellor at Winston-Salem State. He also was an interim president at Norfolk State. And three of the main things he says.
Thomas Nelson, too.
Right. Yeah. He talks about there needs to be sustainability depends on leadership, board governance, and fundraising at these colleges that he's acutely aware of and feels like we need to, do some things. And until we really deal with that, until a lot of the institutions really deal with that, I think there's going to be continuing problems. Maybe maybe some of them are going to close. That might not be, at the risk of saying this, that might not be a bad thing if it strengthens the other institutions that are out there.
Sure. Yeah, as a matter of fact, several of them have closed. Will, and then I'll get to you, Eric. Go ahead,
Well,
Will.
that's why I asked the question earlier about what does that designation mean to be an HBCU? What is the benefit that comes with that? Is there, it was mentioned that we have land grant colleges. Okay, other than what land grant, the definition is, what does that designation mean for those schools anymore? Are they getting a certain flow of funding?
Okay.
There's a special funding.
Yes.
So then when it comes when it comes to HBCUs,
yes,
what is the special benefit? And if that benefit is not there, then we need to innovate as Roger was saying, and look at because all of the issues that he just mentioned, all kinds of other schools are facing those same issues. So if you continue to lump these schools into one particular group and say that we must deal with them the same, when they are dealing with many of the same issues as other schools, it calls for a fresh look and innovation.
Okay, Roger, go ahead, and then we'll get to Eric.
The big difference for HBCUs, though, at one time they had a captive enrollment of sorts.
That's gone.
Where all my brothers and sisters and I went to Howard. Yeah. Practically none of our children have gone to an HBCU.
You're making my point. You got me, for example, who was recruited because of a school wanted to diversify. That was my first experience, right? My two children got scholarships from predominantly white schools that wanted to diversify. You've got ODU, which is over here, what used to be a predominantly historically white school. If you want to give it that designation, to be honest about it, it has probably more black students than Lincoln has, and maybe even Norfolk State, and actually is one of the best schools in terms of graduation rates for black students. So if we're not innovating into the new world, which has the internet and distance learning and all these other things and all these other issues, and students are able to have choice, as Roger was saying, that's exactly my point. What does this designation mean?
So they've got to keep up, is the point. Eric, go ahead.
Sure. I want to address three things very quickly. The first, why is the funding the way it is, why the president is doing initiative as it is, and our universities itself. It all boils down to budget cuts, okay? The money is just not there. Money has dried up federally, and there has to be some hard cuts out there. And the issue with higher education is that higher education has collapsed under its own weight. Across the board, creating degree programs without attaching the jobs to it and the like, rising of debt, which is over $1 trillion student loan debt, which is really the next economic bubble that we're looking at. But the president wanted to what you call right size fit education. Under that, he wanted accountability. And with that, you look at a cost benefit. And if you look at the product that's coming out of public schools, the cost benefit is to divert them to community college to receive associate degrees, certificate programs, or technical training for jobs that are fit for the job force. There was just a story which appeared in the news about a welder making $140,000 a year, which in Texas, with the oil boom and so forth, which caused individuals to question, is a 4-year degree still worth it? Now, I believe education is worth it, period, but it depends on what you want to do. Now, as for all the successes that we have at our institutions, where we've educated generations of doctors, lawyers like myself, educators like myself, sports figures, military generals, and a place where African-American students can flourish and a place where they can be understood, we have failed in the areas of not keeping up with the times. We failed in the areas of mismanagement, failed in areas of corruption, whether it be fiscally, accreditation issues. We failed in the area of lack of vision. We failed in the area of becoming something that we're really not, and also our governing boards. I was having dinner with Alvin, and we were talking about his book. And I sat back and I said, we run our institutions, unfortunately, the governing boards, like the deacons run the Baptist church. And he sat back and he said, you know what? True. You just summed up our, the problem or the book that he had. Now, I'm going to read very quickly.
Explain what you mean by
that. Mercy, you need to stop.
This is what I'm saying.
Hold on.
No. First of all, you got to say some, not all. No, these stereotypes. Now, Will, I'm going to agree with you on this.
We finally
These
agree.
stereotypes.
Boy, this is
just
2015. This is I don't know
it's
about
insanity. And he ran a school and he ran a university. How good did he do? I'm sick of all this stuff. There's schools and there's problems, but it's not HBCUs. But HBCUs has a legacy. We decided years ago to understand our legacy as an HBCU at Hampton University in 1868 that gave women and Native Americans and blacks an opportunity to learn and to get some education because white folks didn't allow it. The General Assembly said, no, we're not going to educate black people, even though you pay taxes, you fought in the war, and they're not going to do it. And that legacy is an honorable legacy, and it's worth the value. But don't sit here and tell me that President Obama got short on money. He didn't get short of giving $2 billion to people coming up from Central America. All we're saying is the fact that there has to be balance. There has to be warning. And I think there has to be a strategic plan that you can effectively with.
All right, go ahead, Eric.
Again, when you talk about the president's agenda, Congress is the only one that can appropriate funds. All right, so it is a political issue. Now, I will amend my statement where I said we run our institutions like Deacon Board.
What does that mean? Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I come from a church culture. My father's a preacher. We understand churches, and we understand that the church, or we call the black church, is a staple of the community. And with that being the case, outside of our churches, our institutions are the only institutions that African Americans are able to participate fully, like a corporation from the top to the bottom. Presidents, vice presidents, chancellors, board members, and the like. An institution of higher education is almost like a corporation. You have contracts that flow through there. You have all kinds of money that flow through there. And, you're able to participate, as I stated, in it just like a regular corporation. Now, what do I mean by governing like a deacon board? Those of you that are part of church culture, you understand how the deacon board governs, But
explain for our audience because they may not understand.
Okay,
we're going to go through this.
For the audience that may not understand, and I look, individuals may disagree with me here, but a lot of decisions are not made with sound reason or judgment. Okay,
but now, let them finish, and then we'll get to it. Go ahead.
I want to read just a quick conclusion. It's only several sentences, and this is from a legal forensic audit of one of our institutions. I'm not going to give the name of it, but it's one of the 101 HBCUs in the country. And it states, despite numerous impediments to the investigation, and this kind of sums up where we are, this particular agency has concluded that based on documents and information reviewed to date, there is sufficient predication to believe that a jury or trier of fact can conclude that multiple acts of fraud, waste, and or abuse are occurring or have occurred at this institution, but not limited to conflicts of interest, numerous contracts with no deliverables, financial waste, inappropriate relationships, payments to family members and friends of board members, inappropriate payments and intentional obscuring of their inappropriate payments, circumventing policies and procedures, and practice of charging fees for, XYZ.
So you're saying that happens more often than not? Is that your point?
That happens more often than not. And listen, guys,
please.
There are some hard questions that we have to answer. Bottom line. And we have to take personal inventory of where we are. Now, again, I love my HBCUs. I fight for my HBCU. I speak for my HBCU. I represent my HBCUs, okay? Just like I speak and represent my churches. But at the same time, if you really want to come to the core of problems and compete for the next generation, you've got to answer those hard questions.
Okay, go ahead,
Barbara,
Will, please.
Barbara, what I'm saying quickly is that I'm not saying that there are not problems. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that schools have governance problems, whether they are white or black or whatever. And what we have to be careful of is when we ourselves are inundated by stereotypes, that we spend so much time trying to fight them and try to prove this, that, the other, that we end up buying into them ourselves without even realizing this is what we're verbalizing. We're sitting in a state right now where our former governor is going to prison. Okay, is he going to prison because he has a white gene that makes him susceptible to making bad decisions and he goes to prison? No. We have a black governor up in Massachusetts. He's not going to prison.
Well. Absolutely.
Is he doing well because he's got a black gene and that's why he's doing well? What I'm saying is that people who run institutions, there are white churches that have governance problems and fights with deacon boards and pastors that get kicked out.
And
that happens in Hispanic churches.
The Catholic Church.
The Pope said, "Hey, I'm out of here. I need to take a break. You bring another dude in."
You mess with kids.
So what I'm saying is,
one at a
let's
time.
be careful
one
about
at a time.
not perpetuating stereotypes and recognizing that these issues, just as Sachs shared with Roger, she said this is not a black problem. This is a governance problem that happens at schools.
Okay, I want to try to get Terrence in real quick because we're almost out of time.
And I want to respond to Will.
Okay, Terrence joins us from Newport News.
Hello.
Hi, Terrence. How are you?
It's been an interesting discussion. I unfortunately did not hear all of it. I was going to comment on the difference in the quality of education and in the content of the education between black and white, or between HBCUs and majority institutions. I went to college at a point in time when, from my high school, which was in Washington, D.C., you went to the best white college you could get into. That was the kind of position that the school and everybody took. So I went to I grew up in Washington, D.C. with a predominantly black community.
Okay.
And,
Terrace, what is your question, or what is, get to your point, though, because we're almost out of time.
I
want you to get to your point.
The point is that the education from a white school and a black school is equal.
It's equal?
Same.
Okay.
And I see that the black school or the HBCU, like other institutions, they provides role models, mentoring, information that you don't get, like how to work the system.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Terrence. We really appreciate your phone call.
Not all of them do.
And not all of them
Some
do.
of them do.
Okay, Eric, you wanted to respond.
Sure. I want to respond to...
We got 6 minutes.
Okay, very quick. 60 seconds. 60 seconds.
Okay, I'll get you.
I want to respond to Will, what he stated earlier. Yes, we do know that it is not just a problem germane to HBCUs. However, as I stated with my theory before, the three intangibles that dictate the tangibles, the lack of credit, respect, and benefit of doubts shines the spotlight on problems that happen in black communities more so than white communities, okay? So with that being the case, we have to understand that there's always been a constant attack upon our institutions. And our focus is upon HBCUs, all right? And so I'm looking at that and I'm focusing on that and looking at those problems that we have, because there are some universal issues that we have with management, fiscal responsibility, and also being able to compete for the next generation of students.
Bill,
if you go back and look at the history of fraud at universities, go look at University of Miami, go look at University of Pennsylvania State, Penn State, and some other issues when you talk about total dollars. Cal Poly had some huge problems. They doggone shut down University of Miami research until they brought Donna Shalala or somebody in there to help clean up that mess they had, the cesspool they had going on up there. So it's not the University of Miami or anybody else. Those are all historically across the board. My problem is, the problem that I think HBCU has is institutionalized racism. And until America decides to fix that and make everything equal, so we're treated when we're good as good, and we're treated as bad as bad, until that happens, nothing happens. The proverbial tree falls in the forest, and if it didn't fall if a black person said it, fell if a white person said it. So until we fix institutionalized racism, you want to get on Norfolk State, go look at the record to see how they've been discriminated against, abused, and all those kinds of things, and then shelter your answer with that. Or look at the same thing at Hampton University, how we've been just stepped over, looked over, ignored. Same thing at Virginia State on principle things where we were just not treated unfairly. And I love President Obama, voted for him 2 times, but he needs to be fair and look at this thing fairly.
Speaking of President Obama, he came out yesterday saying about the idea of community colleges being free for 2 years. What do you think that impact would be on HBCUs? Roger?
I think it would be a major impact because it would take a lot of students who might otherwise go to four-year schools, and they might now go to community colleges. However, it might also be a blessing in disguise, because if you're getting a better quality student, then when you get to the university and they can finish those last 2 years, I mean, I think that's a problem with some of our institutions too, when the graduation rates are not the best that they could, compare with other public institutions in the state.
Okay, Eric?
Barbara, there's nothing new under the sun. That's a model that California had years ago. Community colleges were free. You would go there, and the system in California is that if you don't have a certain grade point average or you can attend a 4-year institution, you go to the community college or the state colleges, and then the 4-year institutions recruit from there.
Okay. Well,
perhaps a lot of HBCUs can innovate and put together 6-year programs that basically at the first or second year, you're like in a prep school and you get into the university, and then you are brought on and you promise these students by the time you're done here in 6 years, we're going to be sending you to Harvard for your master's.
This question, though. Where did 6 years come from? I mean, I understand.
Because a lot of
why
time,
is that?
Because a lot of time when you look at the average, time that it takes for people, when life happens, people drop in and out and different things like that, it takes about 6 years. You look at some of the Ivy League schools, some of the top schools, Hopkins, Harvard, you go to the first year, they don't even count your grades.
Sure don't.
They don't count your grades.
No.
That's true.
That's true.
Because why? Because they want you to succeed. And they help you to succeed so that you can come out and talk about how great Harvard is. Absolutely. And that's what we need to do. We need to innovate and stop in a backdoor kind of way accepting this low self-esteem by how we talk about ourselves.
Okay, we got about a minute and a half left. I want to ask you guys about the alumni of HBCUs. And are we giving back? Actually, we have a minute left. Are we giving back the way that we should?
Not enough. A lot of times on the campus, it's not cultivated. And a lot of times people graduate with more attitudes about what they didn't like about that teacher or how the water didn't work and this and that other. And it's not cultivated in much of the shit at a lot of schools.
Lord knows black HBCUs are not churches because they sure don't know how to give their 10%.
Okay. Well, an op-ed in the Washington Post said that Howard alumni 84% are not giving. Obviously,
84%.
Obviously, that's a problem.
Issue. Yes, definitely. Go ahead, Eric.
Again,
last word.
Sure. The alumni is not giving the way that they should because of there's a building fund with no building.
The building's falling with no building. Carol?
Building fund.
Last one.
Well, I just say ditto to everybody. We're not giving back enough, and maybe that's because of the economy and our participation in the job force, because a lot of times, even though we're professionals, we're not getting paid at the same rate as other people. So you get back to institutional racism.
And with all the calls I get from the University of Arizona to give, I would imagine to say that they feel alumni are not giving enough either.
Okay. With that roundtable, we are done for today.
We still have our Mercedes.
I really appreciate you all.
We got that now. We'll get our Mercedes.
All right, listen, we hope that you've enjoyed today's roundtable discussion. If you'd like to hear it again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. Next week, a conversation with author Martin L. Davis, who says he has the blueprint for what people of color need to do to change their standing in American society. Tune in and see if you agree. And I hope to see you tomorrow evening for the Pink and Black Gala, sponsored by Walking It Incorporated. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer. And Danny Epperson answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.